I've been told this is the place to post mysterious stuff and to get answers. Which is good because answers are what I need right now. So I live in one of those older suburban developments outside of Toronto. You know, the ones they built up in the 70s for the poorer people to move into. I've lived at that house for my entire life, and yes, that includes my childhood. Growing up in the early 2000s with rather frugal parents, my childhood memories were of watching movies on VHS, playing games on Windows XP, and so on. Of the many movies I remember watching as a young boy, one of them was certainly not Frankie Pig Visits Niagara Falls. I discovered the obscure film when I was cleaning out the basement. My parents had moved out some time ago and left me the old house. They wanted me to make one last check for anything they might want to bring to their new house. When I was searching the basement, I found a box in the corner of the room labeled Kids Movies. I opened it and began to look at some of the VHS tapes. Most of them I had fond memories of. VeggieTales, Peter Pan, the Berenstain Bears. Some I just found weird as a child, like those obscure Christian films like Bible Man. Out of all these tapes, only one really stuck out to me as unfamiliar. The aforementioned Frankie Pig Visits Niagara Falls. According to the back of the case, it was made in 1992 by a Canadian film studio called Funbox Entertainment. Odd. Most of the cassettes I had were from the late 90s, around the time my older brother was born. Intrigued, I read the synopsis. From the studio that brought you Frankie Pig's Big Adventure, Canada's favorite farm friend is back in a feature-length adventure. When Farmer Casey lets the farm animals go on vacation, troublemaking Frankie Pig decides to jump ship in Niagara Falls, making friends and learning lessons as he tries to find Farmer Casey and the others. Alright. Sounds innocent enough, I thought to myself. Fortunately, I keep a VCR in the house in case I ever want to feel nostalgic. So I decided to find out what I was missing, and loaded the tape into the machine. So first, it starts with the production company logo, shining on the screen to that generic sort of synth music. Then another logo, for a different company that did the distribution, called Kidscape Distribution Canada. After the logos, the film began with, surprisingly enough, a live-action sequence. Here on the live-action, but obviously cheaply made farm, we were all introduced to Farmer Casey, a friendly country gal who runs Fiddlesticks Farm. She loudly announces to the camera that she's taking the animals on a vacation, and you, the viewer, needs to help her wake them up. One by one, very slowly, we are introduced to the animated animals. Cassidy the cow, Elizabeth the horse, Larry the chicken, and Quincy the duck. But where's Frankie? Given what we know from the synopsis, the pig was up to no good. So Farmer Casey once again gives us, the viewer, the all-important duty of finding Frankie. And of course we do. He's hiding in the mud, silly pig. Now it's time for Farmer Casey to load the trailer and to disembark on our vacation. We make a few stops at some Canadian landmarks, where we then learn some basic information at each stop. Then, Frankie turns to the camera and tells us he's ditching the crew when we arrive to Niagara Falls because that farmer lady is just so boring. So we too join Frankie when he hops off the trailer when nobody's looking. And that's when everything changes. Immediately, the friendly-looking Frankie switches from a cute little pig with a hat to a real man. with a distorted pig mask, and the camera quality became significantly distorted. I paused the tape. What the heck? I said to myself. I stopped watching for a little bit to do some research. I needed to find out what the hell this film was about. So I Googled it. Frankie Pig visits Niagara Falls. Nothing popped up. Nothing relevant anyway. Most of it was just some pictures of pigs on Instagram or something, some of which who happened to be named Frankie. So I then decided to look up the production company, Funbox Entertainment. Immediately I was presented with their website, so I clicked on it. The website was so obviously dated, with crappy vector graphics and pixelated GIFs of various animated characters, and the company motto, creating Canada's premier animation since 1972. There was a link to see all the movies they ever produced, and guess what? No mention of Frankie Pig Visits Niagara Falls, or Frankie Pig at all, for that matter. The most recent film they're credited with is an animated kids film, their specialty, entitled Horace's Lonely Island, made in 1991. However, there was a number to call at the bottom, so I did. No response. So I decided that before I did any more research, I would finish the film. I sat back down on the couch and pressed play. This new, creepy version retained the original childish voice of Frankie, except now it seemed like he was crying as he spoke, like he was forced to say the words. "Now that I've left those fools, it's time to explore," said Frankie. He was standing in a field, very obviously not a set. The camera turned to showcase the skyline of Niagara Falls, lit with nightlights. The film quality made it feel like those creepy found footage films on YouTube somewhere. The camera was behind Frankie, following him as we slowly walked towards the city. The film cut to Clifton Hill. It's practically midnight judging from the sky, and the lights of the strip are the only things cutting through the darkness. Frankie walks up the street, past several tour buses and tourists, none of whom seem to notice him. It's when he turns onto a side street when I notice he's holding something. A knife. A woman, dressed similarly to Farmer Casey, is standing at the end of the alley. When she turns around, her face is disfigured. "Frankie, you naughty pig, I thought I'd never find you," she hollered. The way she said it was eerie. Then, 4 men wearing animal masks appear behind her, and Frankie walks up to her. "I knew I'd find you, farmer lady," the child said on the other side of the microphone. Suddenly, the screen went static, and the camera cut to the film set at the farm. There, the 5 men brutally stabbed the actress who was playing Farmer Casey, while a young boy, who I think is the voice actor who played Frankie, watched. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Why would my parents even have this? I decided to stop watching again. What's the story of this strange film? There had to be some sort of explanation. So I did some more digging on the company, Funbox Entertainment. Turns out they declared bankruptcy in 1994 because they hadn't made money since '92, the same year Frankie Pig Visits Niagara Falls supposedly came out. Other than that, nothing was that out of the ordinary, just business stuff. Obviously, I was missing something. The opening credits mentioned another company, Kidscape Distribution Canada, the people who distributed the film to retailers. A quick search for them turned up their website, which showed that they were still distributing films. A phone number was provided here, so I called. The following is a rough transcription of what took place.
"Hello, this is Chris from Kidscape Distribution of Greater Toronto. How may I help you today?"
Hey Chris, I'd like to ask you some questions about one of the films you distributed.
Of course, which one?
It's this old VHS kids cartoon. I think it's called Frankie Pig Visits Niagara Falls.
Oh shit. I haven't heard of that one. If you leave your name and information, I'll get back to you when I can.
Alright. I gave him my name and address before hanging up. The information I left him was fake, by the way. The way he acted over the phone was a bit too suspicious for my taste. Soon after, I went back to the tape and watched further. After the gruesome scene on set was finished, the scene jumped back to Niagara Falls, where the animals are now carrying the other woman who is dressed as Farmer Casey. They walk her back onto Clifton Hill when police lights begin to flare. Again, the camera cuts to a scene of the falls at daytime, and all seems normal until a hand appears in front of the camera, giving a thumbs up. Then, the body of the other woman is seen, being thrown into the falls. The camera is then spun around to reveal more establishing shots of the city, before a man starts singing children's nursery rhymes. It then resumes to the animated children's film I thought I would be watching. Frankie begins to regret leaving the other animals, and begins to take action to find Farmer Casey and the gang, while also learning about the history and significance of the city of Niagara Falls. Then the credits begin to roll, and this is when I got my notebook out. First and foremost, I needed to find out if the actor who portrayed Farmer Casey was ever murdered, the actor who portrayed Frankie was ever kidnapped, and if the director or someone at the studio ever got caught. But to my surprise, all of the names were cut out of the credits. This is when I went to the police. I drove over to the station and handed in the VHS and told them everything I knew. They told me they would do everything in their power to find out the meaning of this tape. So that's it, you're thinking. That's all. No, that's not all. Before I posted this, something came up on the news. Remember the fake address I gave to the distribution company? Yesterday, there was a fire at that very location. A fire the police suspect to be arson. I think I'm onto something here. If any of you out there have ever seen this movie, or know something about it, or have even worked on it, please tell me about it. I need to know everything about this film. Is it just my copy that's like this? Do the events on the film correlate to anything in Niagara Falls? Please, I just need to find some answers.